Great to see you all today. Myself and my colleague David are chairing this meeting. So David's just waving now. I don't know if you can see us. I'm in gallery view at the moment, sorry, standard view. And if you go into that view, hopefully you should see our panelists along the top, who we have spotlighted so you can see their faces. Oh, David, could you move to the next slide? Just realised I don't have the power. Just a little intro about Catalyst. We're a network of charities, funders and digital design data agencies helping UK civil society grow in digital skills and confidence. So our panellists here are all part of the Catalyst network, and we'll get into their introductions in just a moment. David, thank you. So just to say today's session, we're just doing a very quick welcome. In a moment, I'm going to go to each of the panelists for introductions. They're going to give a super quick, brief overview of themselves, their organisations, and then we're going to get into the panel discussion. We have a couple of really key topics that I hope you'll find useful. So each of the panelists will give their own viewpoints on that. And then we've also got an opportunity to get into some audience Q&A questions. And David, in a moment, will be sharing the Slido link in the chat. So if you haven't already, you can post your questions or you can vote on other people's questions. So when we get to the Q&A, we will pick out the questions that have the most votes. Also, feel free to tweet away, talk about today's session, anything you hear that you think others would find useful, please do share it. Oh yes, and we're recording, as you'll have seen. Thank you. So just as a really brief check-in, I'd like to go over to Slido now if possible, and just give us a little bit of an idea of how you're feeling about digital exclusion, how your organisation is currently responding to digital exclusion. This just gives our panellists a bit of an idea of where you're at. So there's a few options there. You're already part of a local digital inclusion partnership, running a tablet loan or donation scheme. There's quite a few there that are lacking confidence, knowledge on how to respond effectively. Training staff and volunteers to be digital champions, or providing assistive technology support. So a huge range there. This is great to see. So a lot of variety in that one. Lovely. Quite a few of you training staff and volunteers to be digital champions, and part of local digital inclusion partnerships. Wonderful to see. All right, David, I'm going to move us on, get into the panel session. So before we get started, I'm just going to ask the panelists to each introduce themselves, starting with Adam. Do you mind going first? And David, could you skip on to Adam's slide there?
Thanks very much, Gilly. So I'm Adam Micklethwaite. I'm from Good Things Foundation. It's great to be here today. We're a national digital inclusion charity, and we work with a national network of community organisations of every shape, size and variety, supporting them to build digital inclusion into their social mission, and through that to reach as many of the people as we can in the UK who lack digital access, digital skills, digital confidence, so that we can help them have better lives through digital. An example of how we have responded since the pandemic, since the COVID-19 pandemic, we mobilised an initiative during the first period of lockdown last year called Devices.now, working with the coalition of employers Future.now. And this was, and still is, because we're still going with it, we've renamed it Everyone Connected, but it is an initiative to distribute devices and data packages to people in the greatest need in communities, and to do that through the community sector. So since the initiative began, we've had generous donations from the likes of BT and Google. We've had funding and partnership from Barclays, from BBC Children in Need, Vodafone, the National Lottery Communities Fund. And as a result, we've been able to reach over 15,000 people so far with devices and data. These are people who lack access to the internet in their homes and or are experiencing data poverty. Data poverty cruelly exposed by the pandemic alongside digital exclusion more generally. And we're very proud of everything that's been achieved so far. We've also launched a project with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport called Digital Lifeline, which is, again, distributing devices, this time working with people who have learning disabilities. So we've helped 5,000 people so far to get both the devices, the access and connectivity, but also advice on how they can adapt the technology that is available to them to suit their own needs and support to enable them to get started. So just two quick examples of what we've done since the pandemic has happened, but delighted to be here today and looking forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Adam. Can I hand over to Helen Dobson, please?
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Dobson, Managing Director for Citizens Online. We're a digital inclusion charity working all across the UK. We've been around since the year 2000, so we've done a lot of work in that time. Our mission is to ensure that no one is left behind in the digital world that we now live in. And we do that in a number of ways. We work with organisations to help them to embed digital inclusion into their organisations to make the work sustainable. We really believe in embedding digital inclusion. It's, digital skills are just part of our day-to-day life now. There's really no getting away from it. But what we recognise is that people do lack confidence to be digitally included, and there's also other barriers. As Adam mentioned, particularly the pandemic has highlighted the lack of access to devices and data packages as well. So we build digital inclusion networks. One of our projects where we've worked for 5 years is Digital Brighton and Hove. We've engaged with over 300 organisations across the city. So we've built a partnership to tackle digital inclusion. We really advocate partnership working together. And also we've trained over 400 digital champions in the city. So these are people confident to support others with digital skills. As a direct response to the pandemic, we launched a national UK free phone helpline, and that's available to any adult in the UK who is struggling with digital skills. And it's something that we'll continue to run after the pandemic, because what's become glaringly obvious as well is that actually there's a lot of people with mobility issues or caring issues or transport issues, so getting to a certain place by a certain time is difficult. So it's great to have the phone line and be able to get one-to-one personalised support with digital skills at a time that suits them. So that's worked very well. And we've also launched a number of tablet loan schemes during that time as well. So that's the support directly to individuals. And as I said, we support organisations as far as possible as well. And that's why we're here today, to really try and share some knowledge and best practice and help to prevent anybody from kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit, really. So yeah, delighted to be here.
Thank you, Helen. And over to you, Atif.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you for being here. My name is Atif Choudhury. I'm CEO and one of the founders of Diversity and Ability, also known as DNA. We're a social enterprise designed to support adults, really. Primarily, and historically, it's been around higher education. We've supported over 26,000 dyslexic and neurodiverse and disabled learners in higher education. But over the last 8 years, we've been focusing on supporting learners at crisis and at Simungos, and really focusing on digital inclusion and the role of assistive technology. And one of the challenges that we champion a lot is to make sure that we're not just getting people online, but we're keeping them online, and understanding what is it that makes a device, which can for some people be an issue of stress or tension, be exciting and relevant. And how do we do that? And how do we above all make sure that assistive technology, which can be life-changing for so many people, is part of the offering? So we work really to support digital inclusion agendas, but to make sure that people really can understand that so many folks are living lives where they're hiding their needs and often not even aware how difficult those needs are affecting their lives. And looking at the role of the impact of long-term disabilities and disablement, and how we can make sure that, as I said, these assistive technologies can play such a role. In terms of the pandemic, our work is it's quite an interesting space really for us. So largely, it has been responding to the pandemic to make sure that people are staying connected and communicated, especially around mental health needs. Making sure that when we are looking at learners who are being isolated or put into hostels, especially when we look at homelessness, that they are still able to participate, to know where support can be accessed and where human companionship, and even just knowing how to orientate yourselves around the internet when you don't read. They're big issues really, and so that's a big challenge for us, and we're excited to get to know more of you and share that challenge really.
Thank you, Atif. And Jumoke, can I ask you next, please?
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Jumoke. I work as the Communications and Media Officer at Inclusion London. So Inclusion London was a deaf and disabled people's organisation that was set up in 2008. And our mission essentially is to promote deaf and disabled people's equality and inclusion by supporting DPOs and campaigning for the rights of deaf and disabled people throughout the UK. So we're essentially a second tier DPO. So we're the people that help the people essentially. And I joined Inclusion London last year, just in 2020, to head up the media and comms. And what we have done during the pandemic is essentially reach out even further to DPOs that we work with. And we were lucky enough to get funding from CAST to be able to create a toolkit website, which essentially puts into the hands of deaf and disabled people and such organizations the power for their own storytelling, the power to be able to engage in community journalism, because unfortunately, as is so often the case, the stories and lived experiences of disabled people like myself are often told by others and not by us. So we created this website as an opportunity to really get down to the very basics of what it means to be able to actually report and engage with different communities, and sharing not only the frustrations, but also the hopes and possibilities that are possible, within the disability community and throughout. And being that we'd started from a point of accessibility, the website is in easy read for those that have learning difficulties. It's BSL interpreted as well as captioned throughout. So really excited to be here and answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Jumoke. And last but not least, Chris.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here. Great to see the other panelists. My name is Chris. I'm the head of public benefit at Nominet, who look after the .co.uk namespace, if you haven't heard of us. My role is to design, develop, fund, and work on social impact programs, mainly at the intersection of digital technology and young people. So that sees me working in the spaces of digital access and inclusion, internet safety and digital resilience, online harms, digital skills and careers, and crucially, critical digital services for essential services online. So lots and lots of things that we do, and in particular, we've focused on digital access and inclusion over a number of years. We did, like others have mentioned, pivot during the pandemic. That's a bit of a tongue twister, but grateful to work with Adam and the team at Good Things Foundation, where we co-designed and led on the Device.now initiative. One of the what have we done during the pandemic was just like with Good Things Foundation and lots of other fantastic community organisations and national infrastructure organisations, was rapidly respond to the pandemic in terms of what's needed now, as we saw that digital inclusion moved away from being a disadvantage and social mobility issue, which has probably been for a number of years for many, many groups, to an area of extreme vulnerability and protection for individuals who are isolated during the pandemic. And then as the digital divide ebbed, flowed and widened over the last year, we've been working on how do we design out of this problem? How do we support people who are living on the edges, who are on the wrong side of the digital divide, maybe in school or in their community? One of the things that we did was sort of fairly rapidly prototype and build something called the Reboot platform, and that's rebootproject.uk. And that's a guide for every local community organisation, school, corporate, local, national, regional, to design their own device donation and redistribution program where they're in control based on their needs and assessing their needs and their opportunities in their local area. And then working with Adam and the team at Good Things Foundation, we've stood up the Data Poverty Lab. So we're working on devices, we're working on data, and we're working on skills, which are the three horsemen of the apocalypse on a bad day. That's me.
Thank you, Chris. Right, shall we get into our panel discussion? David, are you all right to take over? And I wonder whether we still need to share screen at this point and kick off with the first discussion topic.
Yeah, of course, Julie. I think we'll keep the holding slide on here for the video recording. Thanks a lot for your great introductions. Really excited to have you all on the panel. I wonder if we can start straight away with the theme of this session, which is really how to help charities tackle digital exclusion, first hands-on. We know the pandemic's really magnified the digital divide, and we've seen through a lot of our Catalyst programs, many charities embracing new digital solutions. But the Lloyd's Consumer Digital Index report that came out a few weeks ago still highlights that 2.6 million people in the UK are still offline, and 14.9 million have very low digital capability. So they need support to access essential online services. And I'm wondering if I can ask the panel, each one of you, what simple steps would you recommend charities take to start not just recognizing this as a serious issue, but actively responding with confidence to digital exclusion as a barrier for their beneficiaries? So big question, but really important. I wonder if we can dive into some simple steps. And Helen, maybe you can start, get the ball rolling.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think one of the things that we try to encourage organisations to do is ask people about their digital skills. I think when we, as charitable organisations, are helping somebody with some kind of need, and that might be a health need, an education need, a income-based need, we help people with all kinds of things. But digital, and as I mentioned earlier, it really is just part of our day-to-day life now. It can underpin and empower and help people with all of those issues. So when you're working with your clients, I think building into that conversation and as a starting point and just asking them about their digital skills. I know charities and local authorities and housing associations often refer people to each other as well. And like I say, so they might be referred for a housing need or a health need. And we think that digital skills or digital access should be a need that's included on there as well. We've all mentioned working in partnership in your locality, in your local area, because it might not be a direct need that your organisation can fulfill, and we all understand the pressures, especially on small organisations, of funding. But I think definitely having the confidence to have that conversation with your clients, find out where they are on that scale of, I've shared in the links the Essential Digital Skills Framework, and this is, a government agreed set of skills that is the minimum that adults need to function as part of society at the moment. So I think having that conversation and including it on your referrals is a starting point, start of one.
Fantastic, Helen. Thanks very much for a lot of really useful and rich advice there already. Adam, I know you're also working through your online centres. You're working very closely with community organisations and charities. What's the first sort of first thing you say when you start that conversation, just to build on what Helen just said?
So Helen's absolutely right that digital inclusion is a universal issue. We live our lives digitally. COVID has transformed and accelerated again the digitization of the world of work. And this transformation, this acceleration isn't going to stop. So digital relates to and underpins everything that we do in life and in work. So for that reason, having an approach which is narrow, which is bolted on to what you already do, is unlikely to work in the long term, unlikely to be sustainable. So the approach that we talk to our community partners about, and that we try and talk to all organisations about that are interested in implementing digital inclusion, is the principle of embedding rather than bolting on. So embedding digital inclusion in your mission, in your ways of working, in how you provide support to your beneficiaries, and to do that end to end. So that it's not bolted on. It's not just offering, a digital drop-in once a week for those beneficiaries who feel like they might have a need, but it's upfront, proactively embedded into the processes that you already have, and the way that you have impact in the world. That principle really underpins the way in which we think it's right for organisations to think about digital inclusion. So as Helen said, talk to your beneficiaries, understand the barriers that they face. Do they need to be able to access digital so that they can claim benefits and interface with those systems? Do they need digital in order to access health resources and information, and maybe to use essential services, booking shopping, booking GP appointments, ordering medicines and prescriptions online? Do they need digital skills because it's a fundamental plank of their own employability, and they're going to need those digital skills to be in place in order to apply for jobs? We heard from World Schools UK a few weeks ago that 92%, I think it is, of employers are now saying that they need basic digital skills from their employees. So it's as good as all jobs. So find out, talk to your beneficiaries, understand where they're coming from, and then really break down your own user journey to understand how digital inclusion can be played in at different points in that journey. So it's fulfilling the principle of embedding. What questions are you asking up front in any kind of diagnostic that you do with your beneficiaries to understand whether they might have a digital exclusion, a form of exclusion? Could it be access to a device, and could it be being forced to choose between data and other home essentials? Could it be a lack of confidence in using the internet? Could it be a lack of motivation, just not interested? So understand what those barriers are. When you're actually providing support, ensure that your colleagues and staff and volunteers are skilled in what they need to look for and how they can respond to that. So break down the journey and understand how digital inclusion can play in at each stage. And then the final thing I think I'd say is that when we talk to organisations, we generally advocate sort of 6 steps, we call them, but 6 things it's probably a good idea to do in order to embed digital inclusion. First thing is to make it a strategic priority, and that needs the leadership of your organisation to understand that there is a choice to be made to embed digital inclusion, because it is everywhere and it's a crucial part of how we live and work. Secondly, define success. So understand that everybody has a different journey towards digital inclusion, and try and articulate what good looks like for your organisation in terms of being more digitally inclusive. Promote understanding. So make sure your staff and volunteers know why this is important and what to look out for. Make it easy. So make sure you're embedding it into existing operating models and ways of working. Don't try and bolt it on in a more artificial way. Use existing tools, and the organisations speaking here today have all got amazing things that we can share with you. Measure the data, so collect data that shows whether you're succeeding or not, and only collect what you need. And then finally, review and improve. So ask your beneficiaries, crucially ask them what they think of your approach, to what extent digital inclusion barriers are still there for them, and if so, what more you can do to remove them. So I'd reinforce this principle of embedding, and then say that there are steps you can take to work through to understand what's going to work best for you as an organisation.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Thanks for all that detailed response. I think we're talking about embedding, and we mentioned there's a prelude to that, isn't there's recognizing and understanding those barriers. It would be wonderful if we could add any resources to this Google Doc, simple tools that would help people that maybe don't have the confidence or the awareness out there to be able to embed that approach and start identifying barriers from that first encounter with their service users. So please do keep adding links and useful resources for people to look at, and we will collate all of those into the Google Doc. So don't worry if you don't have them in the chat, we will share the Google Doc afterwards. Atif, I wonder if I can bring you in, because I know you do a lot of work supporting disabled neurodiverse learners, and you talk more about inclusion, not digital inclusion, just social inclusion, and you use words like survival. So embedding this into day-to-day life seems like a given for you. Can you just can you just sort of delve a little bit deeper into that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, David, for contextualizing it that way. Yeah, I mean, look, so much of this is for a lot of people about survival. One of the challenging things I think we all have in this country, and the pandemic has, if it's done anything, it's really proven it, is that this agenda isn't just about skills. You know, it really isn't. This is about survival and participation, and that we can't underestimate the role of mental health loss or stress, and even things that can be even stronger than that are taking people's lives away at the moment. So if we can contextualize it away from digital for a second, just for a second, I know it's a challenge in the context of what we're talking about. At the heart of this is just people and how people can access what they need. And I don't just mean on terms of day-to-day living, but actually what they socially need, what they need for, as I said, for human companionship, as well as coping with a fast-moving, changing environment. So attached to that isn't just skills for jobs, but rather an understanding about choices. And what are the choices that we get to make that come easy to many of us? And what are the choices that are not being available to a lot of people because of, as socioeconomics, the digital poverty we're talking about, but also the sense that there's a deservedness, that I deserve to participate, that I deserve to be involved in this process, even though it's difficult, or that I'm unfamiliar with it, or that it feels like it's a burden to somebody. So it's trying to recognize that exercise of choices is our role. It's maybe unfamiliar to some people, but for DNA, we look at this as a term we call PI. Well, we don't call it PI, it's called PI. If it's easy to remember, it's easy as PI. And PI just means psychologically informed environments. And what that means really is about, at the heart of this moment with a person, what is the impact of the way they're living at the moment? What is perhaps the impact of migration, if they're a migrant to the country, if there's been trauma, if there's been social poverty, if there's long-term illiteracy, if there's disablement? What is the impact of those things? And how do they play a role whether a person's going to navigate support? As I said, there's too much, I think, often an emphasis on getting people online quickly, but not recognizing that part of that is actually mental health choices where people can say, look, I want to go online and I want to use it really well, but I want to use it in this context, but I don't feel like I need to be dependent on it. I think that's a healthy and meaningful choice. But likewise, measuring what is it that keeps someone online? If someone is saying, I'm going online because I'm really worried about being sanctioned from universal credit, for example, as one of the point, then it's important to go online. But that doesn't necessarily deal with the anxiety and the stress. So it's working out, how can we make being online a point of joy and excitement, that it's engaging and it's meeting those needs. So I guess I'm just touching on that really, that if we were to look at this as about tools for participation and how we can make sure these tools are meaningful for people, then we'll probably understand that this is a lot stronger here than about skills. And I think that really listening to Adam and Helen, that's coming across really strong. But this isn't about skills, but it really is about participation and survival within that participation.
Thanks very much, Atif. Thanks a lot for that reflection. And I know you're getting quite a few comments in the chat there. So thanks everyone for sharing that in the chat. Remember, if you have any questions or reactions, best to put them in Slido. We can upvote and have a look at that in a minute. But I just want to bring Jumoke and Chris in to just make sure that everyone's had a say in this question. And I know Jumoke at Inclusion London, you've done fantastic work trying to really foster participation of deaf and disabled people in your community. And I'm wondering what advice do you bring to your sort of network of organizations that are supporting deaf and disabled people in ensuring they can they have that participation, they have that right, kind of a right, Atif, isn't it, that you talked about, that they're able to do that. How do you approach that in your organization, Jumoke?
Right, thank you so much, David. I think within the field, within the area that Inclusion London works, there's this phrase called co-production, and that's certainly something that we deeply engaged in when we were creating our toolkit website. Because disability and chronic illnesses, like, it covers such a broad spectrum, you know, including neurodivergence. What might be beneficial for somebody with X disability might actually be quite a hindrance to somebody with a completely different disability, or the exact same disability that affects them in a slightly different way. The way that we were able to approach our website was to, like the other panelists had mentioned, actually talking to people, but going a step further than talking to them and also asking them, but actively engaging with them. It's like, we have certain ideas from our perspectives and from our lived experiences, but we sought the opinions and also the expertise of the people that we were trying to create this for, the beneficiaries of this website that we would essentially create. And then they themselves went out to the boroughs, to the communities which they served, and they were able to reach out to the people that they were working with in order to be able to find out exactly what is needed. And what this meant was, we realized the great impact that digital inclusion can have. So one of the boroughs that we were able to engage is in South London, and they'd reached out to people using technology that quite a number of people are familiar with, using smartphones, sending messages on WhatsApp, for example. And a person that they had reached out to mentioned that actually their world opened up quite a great deal, because they were able to participate in events, in concerts that they weren't able to before due to inaccessibility, due to a lack of accessibility. And what I would advise is that co-production should definitely be at the forefront. So it cannot be enough for me to, as the service provider, shall we say, reach out to you, ask all of the questions, and then come away with that. I want you to come along on that journey with me, right? Because there might be certain things that you might say one thing and I completely understand something differently. But if I take you on that journey with me and I incorporate my expertise along with your expertise as well as your lived experience, then that's surely the way that things are going to get better. For disabled people, it's often that things are created for you, rarely ever by you. But in order to be able to create things that are lasting and embedded, you know, like Adam rightly said, not just tacking something on at the end of it, but actually embedding it and baking accessibility right into everything that you do and every stage, you have to have along that journey with you the people that are going to use it. Otherwise, anything that you do might just be an exercise in time wasting.
Thanks very much, Jumoke, for that intervention. Thanks a lot. Chris, bringing it back to some of the sort of practical tools, and I know you've been very active sort of looking at how to best redistribute devices, for instance, for those who don't have access to technology and Wi-Fi, one of those kind of really tangible barriers. Can you sort of share some of the great resources out there that you know are available for those that are keen to tap into some of those resources, or are keen to set up their own sort of network of redistribution devices? You also done work on data poverty. How can people find out more about that and tap into those resources?
Yeah. Thanks, David. It's from echoing particularly points Jumoke has just made then about what are the fundamental principles from which, if you're thinking about digital inclusion and digital access schemes within your organisation, every point that the panel members have made is really well made. I would add a couple of things and then build on that the resources that are out there and available and why they exist the way they do. The first one is absolutely 100% forensically understand your user needs, who is at the heart of this. By forensically understand, one of the advantages that we've got of working in community at a hyperlocal level with all the organisations that are here is that you have that close, trusted relationship with your service users, if that is you. That enables you to more deeply understand the unique needs of every individual. We band around, I've worked in digital inclusion for a long time, we band around these huge numbers, and to talk about this national issue, that comes at the expense of really, really understanding the importance of that relationship, that one-to-one relationship that was fractured during the pandemic. It's only through that relationship you can get to understand and overcome some of the assumptions that exist around how might this work for the beneficiaries and the service users. It can be, one example would be that for years we've been asking people, have you been online in the last 3 months? And from that, making the assumption that they have Wi-Fi in the home. And it's one of those things that I look back on and think, oh God, what were we doing asking that sort of question when data poverty is a bit like food poverty and fuel poverty. You can be in and out of it on any given day, in any given week, if you are, one of the 1 in 7 who rely on pay-as-you-go mobile access only, or you're sharing a device within the home. So that deeper understanding, and there's lots of different aspects of that. I've just given you one example of your service user and their day-to-day life, their needs, their wants with digital inclusion, and the point Atif made about they might not want it all. And also, if they're vulnerable in offline, they might be more vulnerable online to certain areas of internet safety that are important to understand. The other forensic audit to do, I suppose, is on yourselves as an organisation. There's a huge online centre network and Citizens Online and other organisations you could partner with, but be honest about where you are in your journey. Have you run a digital access and inclusion scheme yourselves before? Have you got the capacity and the skills to do so? Where do you need support in order to stand up a scheme that really works? Don't forget what you're bringing to the table. You're bringing that trusted relationship to the table with your service users. You don't have to be an expert in all these different aspects of digital inclusion. What you need to do is build together and bring in that expertise. There are organisations out there. And then coming back to your point, David, that's what was behind things like the Reboot platform. We quickly realised through Device.now that we couldn't do this ourselves. We couldn't stand up a national scheme and physically take off the boats at Rotterdam all these machines and then hand them out across the UK, A, because we didn't have the money and support to do so, but B, because it's completely impractical. And so we built Reboot to go, hang on a minute, there's 40 million devices unused, sat in storerooms and cupboards across the UK, be it mobile phones, tablets or computers. It's not that difficult to repurpose those machines that are unused and unloved right now to be fabulously used and loved by other people in the community. The supply of second-hand devices far outstrips the demand, and that's not the case for new devices. But on top of Reboot, when we built the platform, we also recognised every organisation is different, so allow them to put their personal situations, circumstances, relationships with the beneficiaries, budget into the platform to build a tailored programme for themselves. And then there's a huge resource bank, much like Catalyst has with many resources out there, that gives you a link to advice from Online Centre Network, from Citizens Online if you're building a digital champions model, from internet safety, how to think about safeguarding for vulnerable users, how to think about accessibility, how to access the digital skills platforms that are free at the point of service. So there's lots and lots of resources there all packaged up on the hub that we're continuing to sort of build and evolve.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Chris. Can I just build on that? So, I mean, we've seen so much collaboration. I mean, like COVID-19's really accelerated collaboration to some extent across the sector. And I'm just wondering if you're an organization that's just really keen on building on this and getting proactive to tackle digital exclusion, how can we really, how do you find those, how do you create those collaborations or find those existing partnerships? And maybe I can bring Helen and Adam into this conversation, because I know that's kind of your sort of USP in your organization. So maybe Helen, do you want to build on what Chris just said then? He name checked you a few times. Just want to see if you want to add to that. Yeah,
thank you. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think, you know, what's coming through here, we keep coming back to, and, you know, Adam will say the same thing, is about working together on this.
Yes.
You know, helping someone with digital skills to pick up with what Atif said as well. You really want somebody to have a positive experience with technology. It's a one-to-one person-centered approach, and it takes time to build that trust, to build their confidence and keep them motivated to do it as well. You know, Atif mentioned if it's something like benefit sanctions, that's some kind of push that will provoke a negative reaction in somebody. And actually what we want to encourage people to be aware of is all of the positive things that they can do on the internet. You know, no matter what your interest is, there's some way that will make your life easier. However, it's not quick work, so definitely we'd be encouraging people to work together in partnership, and that's what funders are looking for as well. You know, funders aren't looking to fund individual bolt-on quick fix digital inclusion projects, as Adam said. It's actually, you know, coming together to say that, you know, we're all interested in the same problem. And actually, it's the same person in your locality that you're all targeting as well. So that person who's struggling with digital skills isn't only interacting with your organisation, they're also going to be interacting with the local authority, maybe a housing association, the bank, the local post office, wherever it is. So it's definitely important to be reaching out and talking to your local organisations about digital inclusion and what's already going on. We've got a wealth of resources that we can help with that, and we can certainly run facilitation workshops, things like that in areas to bring people together, find common ground and have common action plans as well. But the first point is to have those conversations.
Great, thanks, Helen. There's a real thread here, isn't it, about reaching out and having conversations and talking to not just your service users, but your partners and anyone that's actively working in your local area. Adam, I just wonder if you want to come in here and add anything to what Chris and Helen said about partnership work.
Yeah, thanks, David. Just briefly, so digital inclusion is bigger than the job of any one organisation. I think that's the point I wanted to make. We've heard that it affects people in many different ways. It's part of everything. Many people need intensive support to build their digital capability and skills. So for all of these reasons, it's something that we need partnership in order to fix. And, you know, as an organisation, our mission is we want to fix the digital divide in this country and beyond, hopefully. So partnership is fundamental, and for us that means having a shared vision. So when we're building relationships with national organisations, for example, so corporates and government departments and philanthropy, it's really important that there is that shared vision. And in our experience, it's been important to elevate the issue. So really be able to see it top down, that this is a sort of a really important structural issue for the people of this country and for the economy and for society. That we need to be able to resonate with the mission of the partner organisations that we're talking to, whether that is a bank and their desire to have more of their customers be able to manage money well and use their products, or whether it's a tech firm wanting to put something back into the community. So whatever the sort of the mission of that organisation, we have to stay true to our mission, but find a way to resonate. And then being able to partner well is critically important. So being able to act efficiently and responsively in a partnership. And we try and do as much as we can on that to ensure that as much funding as possible is being leveraged and is coming down to support digital inclusion delivered by incredible community organisations everywhere, including obviously all the people on this call. The second thing I then say is about local partnership, and panellists have touched on this too. Two contrasting examples from our projects. One, both in the Greater Manchester footprint. One was in Salford, where we worked on a project called Digital U that involved creating almost from scratch, really, a sort of network of community organisations that were operating together and were based in the city's most disadvantaged wards, focusing on helping people to gain basic digital skills and really reaching out to the people that weren't getting the support already. And in that case, we had a sort of community champion role, whose role it was to sort of be on the ground and to help all those organisations join up and share resources, and they did, and it was a fantastic thing to see. So sharing expertise, sometimes sharing room space, that kind of thing. So there's certainly scope for that kind of organic partnership to grow on the ground, and everybody brings something different, which is so important when you think back to digital inclusion being a sort of different journey for everybody. Different organisations will be able to bring different things. And the second model, contrasting, was Stockport. It was a thing called Did You Know? And that initiative was slightly different in the sense that it had a set of partners at a sort of medium level who were forming an alliance to promote and raise awareness about digital exclusion in the borough, and also to raise awareness then of the support that was available. So as well as a network of community organisations, there were, if you were, like a sort of next tier level of organisations, so the local colleges, the NHS, job centres, housing associations who were kind of trying to champion digital inclusion at that level too. So many, many different examples, but just two contrasting ones of where local partnership can help to put digital inclusion on the map, can help organisations to share resources and make this more sustainable, and to really take digital inclusion out to the people for whom it is a barrier, who so often face other barriers and disadvantages. So I hope those examples are helpful.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Adam. I'm aware of time and we want to make sure we answer some questions from the audience. I would just like to get a final reaction from Atif and Jumoke around partnerships, because I know, Atif, you've been very active working with charities that tackle homelessness locally and nationally. So can you maybe share one minute insight on those successful collaborations?
Sure. In 1 minute, just in a nutshell, really, it is aspiration setting. So when we're onboarding folks, you know, I start from a position of, look, if a device could do something, what would it do? You know, and for us to ask people to be bold about that, you know, even comical if necessary, if it helps participation. Nothing is off the list. And then our job is to look at that and curate what applications do we need to make this device do to want this person to keep it. Especially those who are facing poverty. We're giving out a lot of tablets, as many good folks are here, but making sure that the tablet that we give out isn't just given out, but we can measure its usage, that it has a legacy to it, it has meaning. If somebody gave me a tablet and it was great, they get to tick off a box, say they gave me a tablet. But if it was in Swahili and I couldn't read it, the smart thing for me to do would be to move it on. It'd be no different for me needing a pair of shoes and someone giving me shoes that don't fit. The smart thing would be to move them on, especially when I'm facing poverty. So that's my real takeaway, is to look at the aspirations that people are going through when you are onboarding them, and critically anticipate that it's hard to tell a story, anticipate it's hard when you don't have the social capital, that you don't know what technologies can be out there easily. You're not part of the conversations that even say there's funds that can get you this for free. Anticipate all those things, and then just to work out, look, go back to the aspiration and the impact on the individual you're trying to support. But we're really, you know, excited to say that can be done. It's not some far-fetched notion that can't be made possible. We get to partner with good folks who do that every day.
Thanks a lot, Atif. Thanks. And Jumoke, you've just been nominated, shortlisted for Tech for Good Community Award. So you must be doing something right with partnerships and local collaboration. Can you just share one key learning from that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. In a minute or less. I think the main learning, and I think would be useful for everybody here, myself included, is that you absolutely must meet people where they are. You absolutely must meet people where they are. For a lot of people, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, as Atif had briefly touched up on, it's like, this is available, that is available. I do not know what I do not know, right? I don't even know where to begin. So if we are trying to create partnerships and we're trying to create ones that last, we have to reach people where they are. We have to go beyond the halfway mark and ensure that if we are truly serious about trying to build lasting changes in regards to digital inclusion and beyond, and just inclusion generally, that we're engaging with people in ways that are accessible for them, that are suitable for them, and also comfortable for them. And if they're not just ready to engage right now, that we ensure that we are signposting so that people know, organizations know, and communities know that we are still here, we are still available. And it's not a case of you being ready on my timeline, but that I will be ready when you are. So that's it. Hopefully I did.
Thanks very much, Jumoke. And thanks for the panel for having that discussion. We've got a few more minutes now to, I suggest we do quick fire questions, looking at the Slido. And I'm delighted to see a sort of peer community already building on the Zoom chat there, with the Twitter handles being shared and a lot of sharing of success stories and challenges. That's brilliant. Jilly, how are you getting? I don't know if you had a look at the slide. I'm quickly going to change the slides over.
Yeah.
How's it looking? Shall we do a quick round of questions?
Yeah, I've lost it. Okay, so the question that has the most votes at the moment is around, I'll just read it out. DigiLocal, a registered charity, have repurposed 1,000+ laptops in Bristol. How can we challenge corporate IT to see repurposing as normal to support lasting change?
Brilliant, thanks, Jilly. Can I nominate Chris for that one?
Thanks, David.
We'll do quick fire round, so let's just...
we can and we will is the very, very short answer. I've just concluded some research into this with GLA and the London Office for Technology and Innovation, which said that the barriers to corporate organisations donating retired devices are actually tiny and behavioural. They're about existing practice of, heads of IT, CTOs who ship them off to the asset disposal company and they go on to waste. Those same asset disposal companies are the ones who can refurbish and breathe a new life into that device. The cost difference is quite minimal. This is just a problem that was ignored because it wasn't a national priority. The pandemic has shown that that can be done. So on the back of that research, we're going to spend a little bit of time journey mapping how it can be done. And then we're going to be asking all corporates in the UK. We think there's at least 50 to 100,000 devices just in London alone that are retired by the corporate sector. And there is no reason, cost reason or otherwise, that they can't go back to the community before they go to landfill or get broken down to waste.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Helen, you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick point on that as well. Anybody procuring any services from an IT company, write that into the tender to what you want from them. Ask them to do it as part of the contract. And we advise that with digital inclusion work as well. If you're procuring some kind of service, quite often you ask, what local apprentices are you going to include in this contract? Ask about digital inclusion as well. What are you going to do to support that agenda in the local area?
And well done to John for working on DigiLocal and repurposing 1,000. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Chris. And thanks, John, for your question. We've got one that's just come up in second. We'll do two more and then we'll do a quick wrap up. Could you recommend a digital skills assessment template for our clients, but also for our organization? I'm looking at Helen and potentially Adam there for a quick answer. You've already shared a template, haven't you?
Yes, look at the Essential Digital Skills Framework as a starting point. I'll also share some of the links, but that's the starting point. But for your organisation, you probably need to build on a bit more from that rather than just the essential skills, but actually skills for work and go a bit further. But that's definitely the place to start, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree with Helen. Definitely start with the framework and agree that you'll want to think about how you can customise it to fit into the sort of diagnostics and assessments that you already do, whether they're formal or informal as part of your beneficiary user journey.
Great, thanks. Thanks for your question too, whoever posted it. Thanks, Helen and Adam, for the answers. Time for one more. Who helps charities? Thanks, Pauline, for the question. Who helps charities with capacity building to make an organisation more digital ready? I think we do some of that, Pauline. Julie, I don't know if you want to come in at this stage or anyone else.
Yeah, I would certainly have a look at the Catalyst website. There's lots of resources on there and we are doing our best to share as much as we can that works and that has been tried and tested and that we've tried and tested. I realise not everyone can be a grantee on a programme, but the resources that are developed during those programs, we are making sure that we share on the Catalyst website. So do sign up to the newsletter to access all those resources.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Pauline, for your question. Can we take just one more here? There's a really quite important one. We talked about reaching out and talking to people. Are there any other ways we can find out who's digitally excluded in our area and reach out to them to offer them support with devices? So how do you start that? You know, if you don't know where to go for that conversation, what other tools can you use?
Shall I take that one quickly?
Adam, then Helen?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so 2 ways. One, there are data sources that you can use. I've posted a couple of them in the chat panel, a couple of good examples. Although frankly, the index of multiple deprivation is probably the best marker for digital exclusion, because digital exclusion correlates so heavily with poverty. So using data and to get that down to a granular level as possible is a good plan. There are some councils, Salford Council, a good example, who are developing their own digital exclusion index measures as well as we speak. So there should be more on that soon. And then the second way is through partnership. So there are other local organisations, and reaching out to those in your area, whether they're CABs or libraries or other community centres or housing associations, they will know which of their users may need digital access or confidence or skills. So also through local partnership and referrals and outreach. So I would say those 2 ways.
Thanks, Adam. Helen?
Definitely. Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Adam has said there, and I definitely think that the multiple deprivation index is a great way to start. There's also a couple of other data sources. One is the Lloyd's Consumer Digital Index. That's the biggest survey on digital exclusion in the UK, and I'll send a link for that. And also the ONS has a little bit of data for that as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. We've got loads more questions. Sorry, we're running out of time. I just want to thank our panel, Adam, Helen, Atif, Jumoke, Chris, for making the time and for sharing such rich insights. We've still got 100. I think we had over 100 people turn up, so that's fantastic. Time for a quick word cloud, because we like word clouds. I just want to see what's the main takeaway from this event from our audience. We've still got how many? 92 people with us. I'll post a link in Slido. Again, be great to see what sort of resonates with you, so we can, when we carry on these conversations at Catalyst, we can sort of get a bit of a snapshot view of what's useful for you. Hopefully you're seeing this poll. Is it active? Should be active. Thumbs up if it's working. Collaboration, it is working.
Just to say as well, we'll share all of the resources and bits and bobs from this event, video recording, all of that afterwards. We'd love to get your feedback, so we will ask for feedback when we send that stuff. If you don't mind spending 30 seconds giving us some feedback on this event, that would be wonderful. We want to make sure that these are useful as possible, and by getting your feedback, we can run more of these also. So please do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie, and keep adding to this. We'll share this on the follow-up and probably on social media. Collaboration coming up a lot, and partnership, networking. There's been a kind of a whole thread throughout this conversation, hasn't it? Thanks a lot for that. Survival also resonated. So thanks to our panel once again. And just to wrap up quickly, we'll add all the resources, as Julie said. There's some really useful resources already on the Catalyst website. NCVA also have a great new kind of digital technology guide. If you haven't seen that yet, we'll share it in the GDoc. And we've also collated lots of resources from all these organizations you've heard today, and loads of others since the start of the pandemic, in quite a user-friendly spreadsheet. But we will also share that, and maybe we can turn that into a shared Airtable where we can each add our resources as they keep evolving. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Julie and Sonia, for also taking part in this session. And thanks again to the panel and all of you for turning up on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.